Hello, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and all my wonderful viewers. This is a quick discovery tips tutorial guide for the Ark Procedural map generation. I will be linking a really great guide for people who aren't sure what certain elements of the settings do for the map. I'm just going to go over a few things that I learned. One of the things that I've really learned the most is using the randomizer to generate terrain is a great starting point. And I'll explain why. Because as you tinker more and more with the seed and the landscape frequency and the landscape radius, you kind of don't get that randomness that makes newer maps appealing. You kind of get stuck with very similar... I've noticed the randomizer set at specific at the base settings gives you one of two things: one huge continent or a lot of tiny separated islands. Now, I'm going to go over a few things. I don't tool with the map seed at all. It's really not too important. Landscape radius. Now, one of the things I've noticed with tooling with landscape radius is the further you're pushing out towards the boundary of the map, the more likely you are to get cutoffs. Leaving this as its standard base gives you a manageable size radius for your islands. You can tinker it slightly higher to push further out to the borders, but then you have to make sure that you definitely fly around your map in spectator mode and get an idea if there's any cutoffs, which could, for some people, be irritating. Water frequency. This, again, isn't something that truly changes that much. I'm not exactly 100% sure why. I'm sure somewhere down the road they're going to explain exactly what that does, but it has not really done anything. Now, mountain frequency is something that I use as a base for generating terrain, and I'll explain. What I usually do is one of two things. Either I use the randomizer to generate terrain, or I'll take the mountain frequency, the mountain slope, and the mountain height, set it to a very low frequency, and use the randomize and use what the game generates for terrain. And I'll explain why. Because this gives you a greater sense of the size of the landmass that it creates. When you have really steep mountains, you lose an enormous amount of terrain. By setting them very low, it gives them a wider base and gives you a larger sense of what your terrain is going to be. From there, you can then tinker with the frequency of mountains and the height of the mountains to break up that terrain and give you zones and sections. Turbulence power is another thing a lot of us have tinkered with, and none of us really seem to know what it does. It does affect the degree of randomness to what it generates. We're guessing at some point this also has to do with the distribution of resources, but we're not 100% sure. Shore slope. Shore slope is something, the steeper you're going to make it, the harder it is to access the shoreline. I usually don't touch this. Again, that's personal preference, but I don't touch it. Water level. This is something I need to impress upon a lot of people. Water level and ocean floor. These are our default. Having tinkered with these and changing them, what you usually end up with is something that people are calling the 3D effect or the disconnect effect, where you have the sea floor set miles below the actual ground, and it screws up your map. So, honest to God, leaving the ocean floor level where it is and leaving the ocean water level where it is should be a standard. I don't recommend touching with it. The only thing you may notice sometimes is if you reduce the water level, you do end up with more terrain. But this is incremental. I don't recommend going too nuts with that. A lot of these are self-explanatory. One of the ones that you really do need to set to a really low level if you don't want pot-marked terrain is erosion iterations. The default is 200,000, and what you get looks like a Mars landscape, and it makes a lot of the terrain completely unmanageable for exploration. just to warn you guys. Something else you need to realize are the biome settings. They only give you size changes for 2 of them, snow and redwood. The redwood by default spawns at 0.5, which is the center of the map. Snow biome by default spawns in the north. Both of them, more so the redwood by default, is ridiculously huge. It takes a bit of tinkering along with the redwood tree density to get the biome where you want it. I turned both way down, only because the redwoods are really tall, and the terrain that comes with them, the dirt, is meant for smaller regions. It's just a recommendation. I mean, some people will do maps that are like 90% redwood. Again, completely personal preference. One of the other things, too, you'll notice is tree densities for the grassland and the jungle are both also set ridiculously high. Some people like that. A lot of people don't. One of the things going forward that I'd like to see, and this also affects generation time for custom arcs, I'd like to see an option to tick off generating all assets. Like, I'd like to see it just generate the terrain with the water, with no trees, no resources, and no dinosaurs. It would probably cut down the generation time in half, and it would be easier to get an idea of what your terrain looks like. Something that, you know, in the future I would personally like to see. I'd also love to see tooltips over these, because a lot of these values, unless you play with them, don't make sense. A lot of these values are ridiculously high for what they generate. Some of them are ridiculously low. And a lot of them, you know, like turbulence power, don't give you any idea what exactly they do. It doesn't seem very intuitive. One of the good things, and I hope that they're going to include other biomes in this, is the map setting location for them. One of the great fun things I've been doing is moving the redwoods and the snow biome around. So they won't necessarily be in the center of the map in the north. You can flop that, switch it, push the redwoods off, you know, to one side. What I'd really like to see is the ability to have biomes on multiple sides of a map. So, like, let's say I want to do the center of the map. It's nothing but a, you know, a large plain, but the islands on the sides, I'd like to have them with redwoods or snow, or, you know, vice versa. Center of the map would be, you know, predominantly snow, and the outliers would be, you know, redwoods. It's something that I'd like to see. Whether it's doable or not, I don't know. Of course, you have the options for saves. One of the things, too, that will also help with the size of your map is the terrain scale multiplier. Once you hit 2 on this, it kind of becomes unruly. It does not generate a map to fill in this, but what I do is I scale this up to 1.9 on all 3 coordinates. What that does is, as you creep up higher on your terrain, you're not going to have to worry about running into parts where the map cuts off your terrain. The other thing I also wanted to touch upon is the sea biomes. What the guide that I post with this video will show is basically what happens is the ocean floor starts at 0.1 negative, and the top of the water is 0.07. So again, with the water biomes and the underwater object density, I kind of stick them near a default. The default itself sits at 0.88 for underwater object density, and 0.14 for deep water biome depth. Now, depending on the terrain of your underwater, this will reduce or increase the number of objects and fish, plesiosaurs, mantas that spawn on your map. I keep it at the standard because you're guaranteed for it to show up every time. tinkering with this, you can get a very barren ocean or a very populated ocean. Currently, I have not seen any plesiosaurs or mosasaurs on any map that I've generated. I'm not sure if it's just that the spawns don't exist, or because they're so rare, or because my oceans, frankly, aren't deep enough. It could require some tinkering, but honestly, leaving those at a default if you want an interesting ocean that encourages exploration, gives you the pearl beds, gives you the oil, I recommend leaving it at a default. So just as an example, I'm going to show everybody one of my arks. This one I called Huge Lakes. This one started with a random generated terrain that I then went in and tinkered with. So we're going to go ahead and run into that, and I'm going to show everybody the ark itself. And for anybody watching this video, please give me a follow on Twitch at Cylon8 and on Twitter at Cylon8. I post videos, I stream sometimes on Twitch, and I'm chronically gaming. So if you have a game that you want me to play, or you want to play with me, or you're interested in, or want to know stuff about, please feel free to contact me. Like I said, this is an example of where I really wish the maps would allow you to generate without any assets. What I'm hoping to see is, as they implement more things, one of the things everybody's been talking about is the implementation of caves. And I'm hoping that functions on an XYZ axis, so you can kind of manipulate where caves spawn. So maybe caves only spawn in the mountains or on the plains or near the beachhead. It's something that I hope to see. And the other thing too, in terms of the map, what I've been seeing is in your main map, all you're going to see as a default is the island. But as you explore around, the map does represent the map that's generated. Hopefully they'll change what the default thing looks like, but we'll see. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and spawn in. Now this is the one that I call Huge Lakes. I really dumped down the mountains, but I still get I had some really nice peaks spawned that I wanted to keep. Now, as you also notice, because of how much in terms of dinosaur spawns and assets that the map maker generates, I'm running a 1080 with 32 gigabytes of RAM, and my FPS is sitting between 40 and 60. I average much higher on regular maps, so that's another thing that you need to realize. I'd like to see sliders for assets in terms of tree generation, so you don't have to deal with the numerical values. The sliders would be more user-friendly and make more sense to me, at least. But yeah, I mean, that's something to think about. So for anybody that's tinkering with this, this is something I've seen a lot of people waste their time spawning in and auto-taming flyers or using the fly command. What I recommend is you hit tab, which gives you your console command. You go into Show My Admin Manager. Hit Enter. And what you're going to get is, up here is the character that you spawned in's name. What you do is you go over here, and you go into Enable Spectator. Hit Execute. Type in your character's name, in this case it's Bob, and hit Execute. Then close this out. Roll your wheel mouse up a couple times. This is going to increase the speed at which you fly around the map. Then using WASD, you can then fly around the map and get a really decent height, so you can get an idea of how scale your map is. Now, as everybody here will notice, I think if I had full landmass, this probably mimics the island in scale, maybe slightly larger. The other thing, and I really wish this wasn't the case, I wish the map borders showed in here as a solid grid to give you an idea of where your boundaries are. Now, as you see here, it's very sizable. My oceans, I'm gonna go in for a minute. with what I have things currently set at, I have the kelp beds, I have oil, I have porpoises, I have mantas, I have pearl beds. I believe as I was flying around, I saw lanternfish. I do have megalodons on here. I've seen them, and I definitely have coal. So you are getting a full biome with the settings that I have. And again, that's personal preference, depending on what you want. See, there's our Mosasaurus right there. I mean, my megalodons, sorry. And you are getting all of the spawns. They're unusually high. I don't know if that's for test purposes. Like I said, I'd really like to be able to reduce that. Something else that other people have been talking about is the transition between biomes. Moving them around gives you a better transition. If you can shuffle them off to coastal areas, especially with the snow biome, you get a better effect. Because see here, most of my snow biome is currently sitting on the side of a mountain or a side of a rock range. So you get that breakup. And in terms of redwoods, like I said, scaling them has a greater effect in terms of size, reducing the size. Currently, I don't like the size that I'm working with. I'm going to be changing this. It requires a bit of trial and error. But as I'm sure some of you will agree, there's some really beautiful just randomness. Just using the randomness of the generator and then tinkering with it gives you some amazing results. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is the first implementation of this. I really hope to see more intuitiveness in terms of being able to spread out assets, being able to maybe isolate assets more, resources, not assets. So, I mean, what I'd like to see is maybe XYZ coordinates where you can only spawn metal in certain areas. You know, encouraging people to explore more. Cave generation, of course. Now that dinosaurs are being handled like blueprints, I'd like to see the ability to hard code spawns on your map. So, like, maybe I don't want a map with flyers, so I want to remove flyers by default as spawns. That would be a great thing. Deleting and adding dinosaur spawns too, that's something that, I mean, you can do it through the INI file now, but I'd love to see that added to the editor. So it's hard-coded, you do it once, and you never have to worry about it again. I know in the Ark Dev Kit, you get access to many tree profiles and that. I'd like to see the ability to control that too. It may not be something due to procedural generation that you could really affect much, but maybe, you know, changing where I only want maybe jungle trees on the whole map, or the newer stout trees that we're getting. Let me go find one. Where are we? Where are my stout trees? Basically, they kind of look like, they're thick like willows, and they're short. Oddly enough, I'm not seeing many of them. But, I mean, yeah. Basically, the gist is, the more customization they implement into this, the happier everybody is going to be. But I really hope this video gave everybody a basic idea of how this works. And the guide that I'm going to be posting with this is really straightforward and informative and encourages you to tinker, because that is going to be what gets you some of the most amazing maps possible. And I think, too, the fact that modders are going to be able to tinker with this is also going to give us some great things as well. Definitely leave me feedback in my video comments. Always looking for people to play. Once I'm sure that procedural arcs are going to be solidly not excessively white. I will be hosting them on my own server. I may go ahead and host this map or another map soon, so keep your eyes open for postings. If you want to play with me, it would be really great. As you see, tons of ocean spawns. Loving this. Absolutely loving this. So yes, thank you everybody for watching. Peace out.